Hello students, welcome back to the course on operations management, and this is the second lecture, and today we are going to talk about productivity. We have seen in the first lecture that operations management is about transforming certain inputs into certain outputs through a set of processes and managing them. I just depict it with a very simple picture here. You see that these are all the inputs that we have, and when we talk about inputs, we are not just meaning the raw material input but also the labor. Hello students, welcome to the course on operations management, and I am Professor Venkatraman from the Mechanical Engineering Department of BITS Pilani. Before we get into understanding the operations management, let us test our knowledge on the term operations management. I have given here various statements and I want you to answer them correct or incorrect. Operations is management of manufacturing organization. Correct or incorrect? Incorrect. Operations management is not applicable to organizations such as eBay, Disneyland, and Columbia Pictures. Correct or incorrect? Incorrect. Product design, supply chain management, quality management, and human resource management are distinct from operations management. Correct or incorrect? Incorrect. And finally, operations is not as significant as marketing and finance to a business. Correct or incorrect? Incorrect. If all these statements do not explain the operations management, then what is operations management? Operations include both goods and services. We normally think that operations mean manufacturing, but it also includes services. When you talk about goods, we call it as manufacturing operations, and when we talk about service industry, we call it service operations. A restaurant is a good or a service? Let's watch a video and then understand how operations management principles can be applied to a restaurant, the Hard Rock Cafe.
Hard Rock is the #1 theme restaurant in the world and plans to remain there. From a single location in 1971, Hard Rock Cafe has grown to 106 worldwide locations. It's done this by adopting what can best be described as an experience strategy.
We even took the doors off Abbey Road when they remodeled Abbey Road. These are the original doors that the Beatles went through, and many other bands.
As an industry leader, its strategy has changed with the times. Hard Rock has migrated from a London restaurant modeled on a Tennessee cafe to food with entertainment to food with an experience. Restaurant goers don't just want a meal, increasingly they want an experience, and Hard Rock's operations strategy is designed to provide that experience. Orchestrating all this becomes an operations management responsibility. All 10 operations management decisions, design of goods and services, managing quality, process strategy, location strategies, layout strategies, human resources, supply chain management, inventory management, scheduling, and maintenance can be significant in building that experience. Curious about the operations management activities that define the Hard Rock experience? Let's take a look at a few of them, starting with human resources. The company seeks people who are passionate about music, love to serve, and convey the experience to visitors, according to Jim Knight, manager of corporate training.
Yeah, when you start talking about a human resource department that really is a true support center for such a big international company, you kind of have to realize that the cafes and the individuals that work within could probably stand on their own when we were much smaller. But I think there's a role that human resources now plays to sort of be the conscience of the company and make sure that we're doing the right thing by the people. So I don't mind us being a voice for them and doing what we can to help recruit, retain, to truly train them, to develop them, to grow them. Anything that we can do to support the individuals, I think that's really what human resources is all about.
Inventory management also takes on a different meaning at the Hard Rock Cafe. There is, of course, food and merchandise. But Hard Rock also has over $40 million invested in one of the world's largest collections of rock and roll memorabilia inventory, most of which is on the walls of its cafes around the world. Pete Boudreau, CEO, oversees it all.
On the memorabilia, we have, north of 60,000 pieces. And we have a core group of people that work here in Orlando at our magnificent warehouse. And they've done a great job of cataloging every single item, every single story with that item. And in the 106 cafes worldwide in 39 countries, they know exactly what is on what wall in what cafe and what have you. And that's important, one, because it's a lot of value that we have out there, so it's important that we have an inventory system that allows us, through technology, to bring up and say, okay, this particular item is in Beijing on the south wall by the stage and so on. And what we do with the memorabilia is every 5 to 7 years we take a cafe, take all the inventory out of it, bring it back to Orlando to refurbish it, and then replace it with new gear.
Finding the perfect location for each cafe is another operations management decision. The company systematically narrows the search from country to city and then precise street corner. It's the job of Oliver Monday, Senior Director of Worldwide Cafe Development, to make the choice.
Hard Rock has a tremendous brand. We're a global brand. We've been around for 30 years. And part of the reason we've been around for such a long time, I like to think, is that we've taken a lot of care and attention in looking at the markets we should expand into. And it is a very critical decision because it really underwrites and underpins the future success of the Hard Rock brand. If I make a mistake, if I pick a wrong market, if I make a bad decision, that affects us for a long time because these are major long-term commitments. We're going into new markets and renting space and signing leases for typically a 10 or a 15, sometimes longer period of time. So once that decision is made, it's there for forever, virtually. And so we have to be very careful. So it is an important strategic exercise to make sure that on a global basis we're looking at the right markets and we're going into the right markets and we're also going in at the right time.
Another operations management decision is layout. The company must consider the kitchen flows for food preparation and restaurant and bar layout for maximum revenue. Every piece of the experience strategy, including memorabilia, music, and visuals, takes on a new significance. This means lighting, sound, screens, contemporary music, and circulation paths are designed to show off memorabilia and expose customers to merchandise for sale. The retail shops generate close to half the company's profit and are carefully integrated into restaurant layout, flow, and workstations. Scheduling is another of the 10 operations management decisions. With 23 departments and over 600 people on the payroll, Hard Rock Orlando General Manager Ken Hoffman considers many factors when preparing work schedules.
We look at sales. We look at sales for prior year and see what kind of business we did during that week that we're writing the schedule. We also take into consideration any events, community events in the area, seasonality. We also take a look at prior trend for the last couple weeks. And then what we do from that is we come up with a sales forecast. So the sales forecast is basically that nucleus that we write the schedule from.
And don't forget two other aspects of operations strategy: product design and quality. In Hard Rock's case, the food is the product and its quality must top the charts. Operations personnel constantly review menus and food research is ongoing. Quality surveys are done regularly. If food scores aren't a 7 on a 1 to 7 scale of quality, it's a failure. Establishing quality standards and controls to meet these standards is the key to a successful restaurant. Operations management is an important element in restaurant management, but at Hard Rock, it's the key to providing their unique experience at each and every cafe.
We're going to reap the benefits of the efforts that we put into it. So in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make.
A wonderful video clipping. You have seen how the restaurant Hard Rock Cafe is utilizing the 10 operations management strategic decisions to run their business very successfully. And they are actually not selling the food and beverages, but actually they are creating an experience for the people visiting the Hard Rock Cafe. More to come later. Operations management is transforming inputs into outputs through a set of activities. We will talk about this in the next lecture when we talk about the productivity, which is one of the measure of performance for an operations management. Take for example a private detective agency in your locality. Will operations management be applicable to them? If yes, then what do you think will be their inputs and what do you think will be their output? Think about it. Operations is one of the 3 functions of any business. The other 2 functions are the marketing and finance. Any guess which is more impacting to the business? We'll see it with an illustration just now. And the last, operations permeate the entire supply chain. Can we say that what's happening within the factory premises is operations management? No, it encompasses the complete supply chain, starting from the raw material supplier, sub-vendor, the manufacturer that is happening inside the plant, the distributor and the retailer. All these processes are included in the operations management. Now let us try to understand what is the impact an operations decision can make on a business. We are talking about an organization called Fisher Technologies. They have been running good and they have been earning some money as well. But what happened was that the money that they earn after paying the direct expenses, the tax, the finance charges, etc., the remainder is just sufficient to meet their fixed cost. They are unable to find money for reinvestment into the business so that they can grow. When you cannot grow a business, sustaining it becomes difficult. particularly when the competition is very stiff. And that's exactly the position where Fisher Technologies is in. And the CEO of this company calls the heads of marketing, finance, and the operations for a discussion. Before we really get into what they discussed, let us try to understand their current situation. This is their profit and loss account. I will quickly explain the various headers here. Their sales revenue is $100,000, out of which 80% is consumed for direct cost, quite a high value, isn't it? What is direct cost? Direct cost is something that is directly linked to the sales. That means whenever the sales increases, the direct cost also increases along with the sales proportionately. If the sales doubles from 100,000 to 200,000, the direct cost will also get doubled from 80,000 to 160,000. Gross margin is the remainder of sales after paying the direct cost. Finance cost is something that you pay to the bankers when you take loan from them. This is the finance cost. And the remainder after paying the banker is the profit before tax, which is $14,000 here. And they have to pay a statutory tax of 25% from this remainder of 14,000, which is 3,500. And what remains is the contribution that can be used for paying up the fixed cost as well as for investment. Now you see the problem that the remainder is too little, that they are just able to meet the cost of fixed expenses, and they don't find anything beyond that for reinvestment into the business for the business growth. So the head of Fisher Technologies discussed this with the heads, and the marketing head came up with an idea after a lot of persuasion that he can increase the sales by 50% without incurring or without any additional capital investment. But he said, like, if I have to increase the sales by 50%, I need to recruit a few more sales guys, is what he said. What he essentially means by that is, like, if he has to increase the sales, he has to increase the direct cost as well, which is the labor cost. So let us look at what will be the impact of this. If the marketing head is able to increase the sales by 50%, what will be the impact of it on the profit and loss account, particularly on the contribution? The sales increases from 100,000 to 150,000. So is the direct cost from 80,000 to 120,000. How did we arrive at 120,000? 80% of 150,000 is 120,000. As I mentioned to you, direct cost increases with the sales. Gross margin is the remainder between 150 and 120,000. The finance cost remains the same at 6,000. The remainder is 24,000, from which 25% has to be paid as the tax, which is 6,000. How did we get the 6,000? 25% of 24,000 is 6,000, and the remainder is the contribution. So if the marketing head, as per his commitment, is able to increase the sales by 50%, which is quite difficult, particularly in an environment where the competition is quite stiff, then the contribution increases by 71%. But what we need? Double. Double means it has to become $21,000 and not $18,000. So even after increasing the sales by 50%, what you can increase as a contribution is only 71%. Now, he talks to the finance head, and finance head comes with a proposal to reduce the finance cost by 50%. How is he going to reduce that? is going to identify certain non-performing assets, some extra land, some old machineries, etc., sell them and then pay the bank loan, so that the loan amount comes down, so is the interest. So he says like, I will be able to reduce the finance cost by 50% without incurring any additional investment, capital investment. Let us see what happens when this finance option is considered. The sales remains the same at 100,000. The direct cost remains the same at 80,000. So is the gross margin at 20,000. The finance cost reduces half, 50% it is reduced, so this becomes 3,000 instead of 6,000. The remainder is 17,000, and if you pay up a tax of $4,250 out of the 17,000, what remains as a contribution is only 12,750. Compared against the current level of 10,500, this is just 21% improvement. What we need is doubling the contribution. Instead of 21%, this has to be 100%. Then only this 10,500 can become 21,000. Nowhere near the target. So he looks at the operations guy and he comes up with an idea by which he will be able to reduce the production cost, which is the direct cost, by 20%. The other people committed 50% of improvement, whereas the operations guy said like, I will reduce the production cost by 20%. Let's see what happens. The sales remains the same at 100,000. The direct cost reduces by 20%, which means that 80,000 becomes 64,000. How did we get that? 80,000 divided by 20% is 64,000. Then gross margin is the remainder, which is $36,000. The finance cost remains the same as at $6,000. So the remainder is 30,000. After paying up 25% of this amount, which is 7,500 for tax, the remaining contribution is 22,500. What is this 22,500 compared to the current level of 10,500? 114% improvement. So now you can understand what cannot be achieved by a substantial improvement in marketing and finance can be achieved by a not a very substantial but a considerable improvement in the operations management. By reducing the cost of production by 20%, we are able to double or exceed the target on contribution, which is impossible in the case of finance and marketing option. So what will be your choice? Obviously the operations management. Let us look at the service operations. We have been talking about the manufacturing operations. This slide explains some of the features of a service operation. We have just seen that in the video clipping as well in the Hard Rock Cafe. You will be able to appreciate them, appreciate these points after seeing that, watching that video. In the service operation, the output is not tangible. It's an intangible output. You have seen that in the Hard Rock Cafe video clipping. They are not selling food and beverages, but they are selling experience. The customer experience is the one that they are considering to be their product. Even in the feedback survey sheet, if you have watched, they have mentioned everything in terms of service, in terms of experience, okay, and feelings. There are no inventory. In the Hard Rock Cafe, if you have seen CEO statement, what exactly he says? Is he talking anything about food and beverages as the inventory? Even the raw material for that, they are very insignificant. the inventory there is mostly the artifacts, the antiques, etc. You have seen the shoes of Marilyn Monroe. So those are all the items that they preserve as inventory, but the product is not the inventory because they are consumed as it is being produced. They are not stored. If they are storing it, it's not a good restaurant, you know that. Every service is unique, be it a restaurant or be it a hospital. When a patient visits a hospital, he undergoes all the treatments. After the diagnosis, the treatment that is, he undergoes all the tests, and after the diagnosis, the treatment prescribed to him is very unique, and it is just concerning that patient. So in the service operations, every service is unique, be it a saloon, be it a restaurant, whatever it is, the service is unique. There is direct customer interaction, be it a hospital, be it a restaurant, or even if it is a call taxi, it has a direct customer interaction. The taxi driver interacts with the customer. Who is providing the service interacts with the customer directly. There is a high level of customization. Example, saloon. You may wonder what can be the customization in a restaurant. You have watched it in the Hard Rock Cafe. What kind of experience that they offer to the visiting customers is a high level of customization. The products may look standard, but the experience is highly customized. It is knowledge based. Whatever be the service industry, it runs on knowledge and skill. For example, the financial institutions, insurance agents, stock market, all these things are knowledge based, and that is the reason why the salary structure is very different in service sector. It is normally off-site because these days it is highly IT enabled, and it has no residual value. In a restaurant, what will be the residual value? At the end of the day, will it have anything that you will be able to sell in terms of products or in terms of assets? Hardly any, because it is highly knowledge based and it is customer experience is the product, so it has no residual value. And these are all the reasons why US is offloading considerable amount of their service operations to the other countries like India and China, because it can be done off-site. It requires the knowledge base which is available in India. Since every service is unique and the consumers are large in number, you need a lot of people to service them. Such a population is not available in US. So with all these reasons, and it has no residual value, so there is nothing like they have to lose their asset if they outsource it. So considering all these points, US outsources most of their service operations to India and China. The new trends in operations management. What is happening in the current century in operations management? Because we have been talking about operations management for quite some time, and is it the same one or is that something emerging out of it? There are many things that are emerging, and the first one is the globalization. I'm going to show you a short clipping, the Boeing story, which is an amazing video clip about the globalization of operations management.
The 787 will be built differently than any other airplane that Boeing has ever built. Instead of being made from metal, it's made from carbon composites. And what we're seeing here are the heads of the machines that lay down the tape. Carbon tape it comes in rolls like duct tape, is rolled along a surface and laid flat. The carbon fiber is infused with epoxy resin, And this black material on top of this slab is what's being laid. And when they're making a fuselage, they spin a barrel. This is called a mandrel. It's a cylindrical mold. And they lay the tape. There's the tape head machine again, laying the tape in layers one after the other as the mandrel spins and the fuselage takes shape. You can see it turning as the head works its way along. And so they make layers of tape, and when they've got the shape ready, they put it in a giant oven. That's what this is. It's called an autoclave. They've had to build some of the biggest autoclaves in the world for the 787 project. The one in Wichita, for example, is 30 feet in diameter, 70 feet long. They take it out and it's baked hard. The material is black when it's not painted, so you'll see airplanes no longer having the shiny metal unpainted surface. Joining two of the fuselage pieces together. And there we have the beginning of a Dreamliner. For the first time ever, the wings of a Boeing airplane will be made overseas. Boeing developed in its research center here down on Marginal Way the method for making the wings. This is the composite skin being fitted to the ribs of the airplane. And this picture is in Nagoya, Japan. This is the Japanese now having fully developed the technology. The big blue cylindrical thing there, that's the oven, the autoclave. In this plant built just for the 87, the wings slide along on these automated trolleys and slide into the oven. But the very first piece, the first 787 that had to be built, was the center wing box. It's actually a part of the fuselage that holds the wings. It's built by Fuji in Japan. And here we see the first center wing box of Dreamliner number 1. This part had to be redesigned later because we did some tests and found it wasn't quite strong enough. The Dreamliner will be built differently than any other Boeing airplane in that it's being assembled around the world. And the huge pieces that are delivered to the final assembly plant in Everett come in this, the Dreamlifter. It has a swing tail that opens out, and a large cargo loader takes out the pieces that have come from Italy, from Japan, from South Carolina, from Kansas. Boeing calls this the DBL, the darn big loader. And here we see coming out the back the rear fuselage built by Vought in Charleston, South Carolina. And sliding out behind it in the white covering is Section 41. That's the front fuselage, including the cockpit where the pilot sits, built by Spirit Aerosystems in Wichita, Kansas. Two of them are loaded on the darn big loader and taken into the factory for assembly. The idea is that eventually these pieces will come fully stuffed with all their systems. They didn't arrive that way originally when Dreamliner 1 was put together. They were empty shells. Now these are the wings, arriving from Japan. Again, the swing tail of the Dreamlifter is open and the wings have come out. You'll see they're missing the edges at the leading edges and the trailing edges. And here's the largest section of all that comes in a single piece. That's coming from Charleston also, built by Global Aeronautica in Charleston, South Carolina, is the entire 85-foot long mid-fuselage section. And this, from Italy, is the horizontal stabilizer, the horizontal tail. There are the wings, or the Japanese wings, just fitting through the doors of the enormous doors of the Everett assembly plant. But they fit. Now once inside, they'll move these pieces together for final assembly. That's the center fuselage section. You can see the place where the fairing will go around where the wing joins the fuselage. This is the very back of the 787 assembly bay. You can see this Section 41 from Kansas joined to the midsection that's come from Charleston. The black composite material has a coating over it to protect it so that it has this greenish color. Here's the aft fuselage being joined, made by Vought. When Dreamliner 1 was first joined, they had a gap between the fuselage sections. Here are the wings coming on. Look at how slender those wings are. And now here's one of the most difficult pieces to join. It's the horizontal tail, and behind it you can see the APU, the auxiliary power unit, that little cone at the back. That's made in Korea. And in this piece of tooling, they will finally join everything together. And at the very back you'll see a tower, kind of blue and gold tower. That's it there, called the mother of all tooling towers in Boeing's affectionate jargon. And they use that to pull up the vertical fin. And you can just see the vertical fin of Dreamliner 1 being attached. That's the only piece of the airplane made by Boeing. It's made in Frederickson near Tacoma. Here are the engines. In this case, Rolls-Royce engines sent from England to go on the first Dreamliner. The landing gear, made by a French company, Messier Doughty. And with the big joins made, the plane is ready to move forward to the next position to start getting all its systems installed and connected. That's Dreamliner 1, just before the rollout 2 years ago. We didn't know then, but most of the systems hadn't been installed. Dreamliner 1 rolls out of the factory in 2007 to go across the 526 freeway on a bridge into the paint hangar to be painted.
That's a real magic. Coming back to the globalization. These days we talk about this globalization quite often. And why is it so? Is it something a fancy that every organization wants to be a multinational? There are various reasons for this globalization. One is, what is enabling this globalization is the telecommunication and lowering transportation costs. This is one thing which is enabling it. And when there are very large projects like this, you don't get the adequate number of capable engineers at one location. If Boeing has to do the entire project in United States, they will not be able to do it because they will not have adequate number of talented engineers. And it will be very expensive to hire as many engineers for this program. So they find it convenient and possible to do it in multi-locations so that the resource crunch is managed. In addition to that, very large projects like this can become quite risky if it is done at one location. And you see in the Boeing case, just for the body they work with 4 different organizations outside their country. And this de-risks the project. So these are all the reasons why the organizations go for globalization. It's not just the fancy. And of course, you have, for certain operations, you find the cost to be quite competitive to do it in a particular location. Though it is just a matter of time that it is going to get balanced out. The second new trend in operations management is supply chain partnering. We have been discussing about this supply chain partnership in the very recent years. Actually, it started with Toyota, but later adopted by many organizations across the globe much later. Even in 1980s and to an extent 90s, when Toyota production systems were quite popular, people were not talking supply chain as a partnership. They were still considering the suppliers as external to the business, but they have now found that an organization cannot be competitive unless otherwise they partner with the supplier. Everything an organization cannot do it by itself, and they have to partner with the supplier who owns a lot of knowledge about certain processes. So there are several automotive companies in India who have partnered with their suppliers for their special projects like the Nano, the Indica, etc. Sustainability, again, the environmental impact is becoming a point of concern. So sustainability is another new trend in operations management that is given a lot of weightage right at the drawing table when the product is getting designed. Rapid product development. This is the next trend, particularly for electronic equipment. The product life cycle of electronic equipment is as low as 6 months. We will be talking about product life cycle more in detail later, but the electronic equipment are found to have a product life cycle that is lesser than 6 months. When the life cycle itself is lesser than 6 months, how long can we take to develop a new product? If we take 2 years to produce a new product, to design, develop and produce a new product, and that is going to live just for 6 months, then we will always be in the drawing board and never be able to get into the market, because the advancements are so rapid that you will not be able to cope up with the technological advancements if our development time is very long. So this puts a lot of pressure on the product development. The technology is working towards a rapid product development. Mass customization, though this terminology was there right in the early 1980s, mass customization is again getting its due focus with when the market is getting really fragmented. What do you mean by fragmenting a market? A market, when it gets saturated for a given product, you try to specialize the product for a given set of market, and we call it as a niche market. And when market gets fragmented like this, the product variety increases. While the volume remains the same, the variety increases, and when the variety is high and as well as the volume is high, you will not be able to handle it with mass production or a project based production, but you need to have something called a mass customization. Just-in-time performance is quite popular. I don't have to explain this in detail, but one of the key benefit of just-in-time inventory is that it liberates considerable amount of capital, which is expensive these days. The capital is becoming very expensive these days. So the JIT system liberates the working capital, which can be spent on various other productive purposes. And the last one, the society is becoming knowledge based. The society is not just satisfied with salary and perks, but they expect dignity of labor. This puts a lot of pressure on technology to standardize the mundane activities so that the society can be utilized for knowledge based activities. So these are all the new trends in operations management. With this, I close the first lecture. Thank you very much for listening.